heavy duty here. How to fix the world. Now you have to take a decision right now. You want to take the red pill or the blue pill? You want to learn about the truth? Who wants to learn about the truth? Who isn't sure should leave the room right now. There's another thing, you know. Think about what is the mission of your life. If you want, you can share with me, otherwise keep it for yourself. But if you don't know what your mission in life is, think about it. It's about time. I've been raised at a time when most people believed that traffic jams are unavoidable, that crowd disasters are God-given or caused by panic or aggressive behavior, that stock markets crash due to black swans, and that multinational companies can control and fix the world, that social order is created by power, and many more things that are wrong. A couple of years back, we came up with the idea we really needed to make a big effort to understand the world much better. And the idea for this Future ICT initiative was born. It started first with a visionary project, and that proposed an innovation accelerator, a number of measures actually to accelerate innovation. Inspired, of course, by CERN as a particle accelerator, it's clear. And a lot of things happened actually in the last 10, 20 years, maybe even more. And I was one of the people who promoted socio-economic and traffic physics. As you know, I've been working on pedestrian and crowd behavior and studied these interesting emergent behaviors, collective patterns of motion that come about by self-organization. The good ones, like lane formation, as well as the bad ones, like crowd disasters, crowd turbulence causing them. We've been looking into traffic flows, stop-and-go waves, and different kinds of congestion patterns that arise, and we have described them by mathematical formulas and simulated them in a computer, and all of that can of course be read in the literature. So if you think this is going way too fast, you're right. But then look up our publications and all this. Our webpage has it all listed. Yeah? And there's even an analytical theory of traffic flow, even though it's a highly nonlinear, complex phenomenon. Actually, not just one, there are many phenomena that need to be understood with one theoretical approach. That's the challenge, right? And then basically what happened is the field was expanded towards computational social science. So, you know, sociologists and economists have often said, well, the social and economic physics stuff, it's, you know, too physics driven. And I later on became professor of sociology, actually, even though I started as a physicist. And then I read sociology books, of course, much more carefully than before, and I agree, you know, we need to read this literature if you want to make meaningful contributions to the open questions in that field with your methods. And we've been looking into opinion formation processes, social influence, into coordination problems, self-organization of behavioral conventions, the outbreak of cooperation, and also the breakdown leading to tragedies of the commons. What are the conditions for this or that to happen? The spreading of crime, also evolution of moral behavior. So all of that can be understood based on evolutionary game theory. And we've looked into the evolution of social preferences. So actually, the theory of Homo economicus only holds in certain parameter regimes. People are actually social in nature, most people are, and that has reasons that we can understand. And so the paradigm of Homo economicus needs to be replaced by a paradigm of diverse people, among which many of them actually have social preferences. Then emergence of social norms and the fabric of our society, the occurrence of conflicts when people have different norms and cultures, revolutions as instability phenomenon, economic instability, booms and recessions, spreading of crime, and all of that has been summarized in a number of books. Why Society is a Complex Matter is an easy read, good to start with. Social Self-Organization is a collection of various publications on those different subjects, so if you're interested, that's a good starting point. But we didn't stop there, so we came up with experimental and participatory approaches. We built a decision science laboratory, one of the most modern in the world, and we created platforms for online experiments on the internet using Amazon Mechanical Turk. We created the software for this, and we also didn't stop there, but also we were part of this new field of data science. We looked into spreading of conflict from one country to other countries, as we've seen it after the Iraq War, for example. We've been looking into the spreading of scientific innovations and spreading of memes, of culture. Some of this, like this one, published in Science. We've been looking into migration of professionals, into migration of refugees, and it didn't stop there. We came up with the whole system science. That means a system science on a global scale, or a science of global systems in a sense. And there was this publication in Nature, Globally Networked Risks and How to Respond. And an interesting point here is that there are some phenomena that are uncontrollable, even if you have all information and modern technology and all this, because we have power laws, in particular in social networks, that make certain kind of phenomena uncontrollable. And we've been looking into one of the problems that troubles the world since a very long time, conflict in the Middle East, and how it can be simulated and understood with models based on data. And this makes it possible to look into different kinds of scenarios and give politicians some idea of what might happen if you do this or that. We've also come up with a model that makes epidemic spreading much better understandable, because global mobility patterns mess up the classical diffusion patterns of diseases. But if you take into account the mobility metrics, basically you can define a new metric that allows you to represent the same spreading patterns in a different way, and then suddenly it becomes again a circular spreading pattern around the origin of that disease, and that allows you to determine, first of all, the origin of that disease and in what city it occurred, but also it allows you to make predictions of what would be the next cities hit by the flu wave, and in this way you can of course prepare better, have resources ready, and so on. And we have also created this wonderful ETH Risk Center. Later on there was even a Singapore ETH research initiative on future resilient systems. And this is to address in particular cascading effects, as they happen in many systems, where basically one cause can have different possible effects, or one effect can have different causes, and these causes may be, the effects may be much later than the causes, and so in many cases it's very difficult really to determine the cause and effect patterns. But in any case, what can happen in these kind of systems is this, that a local perturbation, it can be whatever small in some cases, can mess up the entire system. No, and the entire system could be the world. And that's the situation we're in. I call this the complexity time bomb. This time bomb is ticking. And it has created already some big damage, as this work of Frank Schweitzer and others has shown, where the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers caused the bankruptcy of hundreds of other banks and cost losses of hundreds of billions of dollars, which of course shouldn't have happened. If this system was properly designed, the problem should be contained. We're also looking into the effect that more connectivity has on the level of cooperation. We know that neighborhood interactions can increase cooperation in social dilemma situations, but if everyone interacts with everyone else, or if everyone interacts with randomly chosen people on this planet, then it turns out that cooperation goes down. So in the beginning, as we network the world, cooperation increases, and we would say, oh, let's network it more and more and more, and cooperation goes up, and suddenly, unexpectedly, and most people wouldn't understand that cooperation breaks down, slowly but surely. Now, all of that would have been addressed by this Future ICT flagship. We were competing for 1 billion euros at that time. We wanted to build a furniture nervous system to collect the data that we needed to understand what's going on, and then simulate processes on this Earth with a living Earth simulator that would be able to look a little bit into the future, into possible scenarios and the implications, and a global participatory platform that would open up the power of this new technology for everyone. And there were many application areas, including global system science and all sorts of exploratory, financial systems, health, epidemics, crime, conflict, risk and resilience, sustainable cities, smart energy systems, and also environment and sustainability and innovation accelerator. And across everything, ethics would have been really an important subject. We gathered scientists from all over the world. More than 2,000 of them wanted to collaborate with us. They were distributed in about 30 countries. In each country, we created interdisciplinary communities that would bring social scientists together with engineers and natural scientists. And that was something new, and it really triggered off new kind of thinking, new kind of research, and computational social science was certainly one of the most successful branches of activities resulting from this. And also the United States and Russia, China, Japan, Singapore, Australia, Israel, they all were on board. And it was the most popular project, actually, as you can see over here. But then in the end, it was not selected, contrary to rumors, by the way, from many sides. Now, I'm not angry about this. What I'm angry about is the following. Something else happened. Something really concerning. Something pretty bad. Have a look at this letter. This has nothing to do with the flagship decision. Do you see any particular pattern here? That's Arnold Schwarzenegger, Arnie, What he has to say as a politician. Well, basically, he complains that they've passed all sorts of laws, but the important reforms haven't been passed. He's angry. Did you see a pattern here? No? Yes? Now, do you see it all? So what I want to say, we are in big trouble. We're in big trouble, and because we are all being targeted, all of us. If you thought it's just about targeting terrorists and big bad guys, no, absolutely wrong. When you read the newspaper online, somebody reads you, what you're reading, how much time you're spending, what you're interested in. When you use your browser, it's reporting to companies. Actually, your click data is being sold. Yeah? Whenever you use your browser, cookies will follow you. If you turn off the cookies, will not get a service. So every single click that we've done in the past years has been recorded, and probably much more. You know, what your smartphone can see, and so on. So it knows everything about you. Who has been aware of this? And do you find it okay? Who is happy with this? Nobody. Yeah, so CIA director Gus Hunt at that time actually said, it is really very nearly within our grasp to be able to compute on all human-generated information. You're already a walking sensor platform, he said, noting that mobiles, smartphones, and iPads come with cameras, and so on, and geolocation capabilities. You are aware of the fact that somebody can know where you are at all times because you carry a mobile device, even if that mobile device is turned off, he said. You know this, I hope, yes? Well, you should. So, you all have spying devices in your pockets, in other words. And unfortunately, a new totalitarianism is on the way. And why is this? Because knowledge is power. And many people like to have power, some at least, and they can gain it with big data. Because in just a minute, 700,000 Google queries are being made, 500,000 Facebook posts are being sent, within my lecture already a few, I guess. And as you move around, as you go shopping, everything leaves digital traces. And so people have been asking, can we know everything that happens on this planet? And Chris Anderson said, well, we just had enough data, then quantity would turn into quality. We wouldn't need science and theory any longer. The data would just reveal the truth by itself. And that's why secret services around the world have started to collect data like crazy. And they wanted to build a crystal ball that allows you to see what's going on in the world in any place in real time. And even look into the future with predictive analytics. And the military, of course, has been working on this. And the idea was one could now build a digital bantam panopticon. Now, the concerning thing is this panopticon has been built as the perfect prison. So it's one person that can look into any direction. You can't see where this guard is looking, but he can control everyone. And everyone, in this case, is us, and we're the prisoners. And that's why you should take this novel, the so-called, very seriously. No, it's called science fiction, but most likely there's more truth in it than fiction. Now, maybe you have noticed, because houses and streets and all this look more or less the same, approximately, as 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago. You're not that old, but anyway. But fundamentally, our society has changed. It works in a completely different way. And I would say most social scientists and economists, and they haven't noticed, or if they have noticed, there is not much literature about how this new world really works. It's still the old subjects that dominate the thinking. Now what has happened is that technology has been combined with a subject that has been considered to be a soft science and very harmless, psychology. Later on, economists were going into a similar direction, behavioral economics, and this is about understanding how people really behave. Now, and the purpose is marketing. They want you to spend your money. This is what you're good for. No, from the point of view of a producer of goods, that's the only thing that matters. You know, that's your life. You ought to be a consumer and spend your money. You know, that's the point. Now, they know that only 5% of information reaching your brain is consciously processed. So we're trying to sneak around your conscious decision making with subliminal stimuli and try to program you to do certain kind of things you would not even have noticed why you did this. You would think it was my own idea, but in fact it has been triggered with carefully designed mechanisms. You know, and a lot of them look like this. If you turn this around, it becomes much more clear what this is about, you know, and so it creates desires that you can't satisfy at that moment, and so you compensate your desires by shopping, you know, by consumption. And this is what works pretty well. So it makes you buy stuff that you don't want, you don't need, including expensive cars. And there are a lot of hidden patterns, basically. These are programming you. And some of this is called predictive programming. So it prepares you to think about certain kind of things in certain ways. Big Brother, for example, well, the message is, oh, actually, it's quite funny, isn't it? And rather harmless. Having these people in the container and watching what they're doing. You know, it's about you, actually. It was preparing you to accept Big Brother watching you. So we're being hypnotized. You know? They're even telling us what they're doing. But if you don't protest, they assume that you would consent with what they're doing. And they're really programming you. They're telling you what to do. In fact, in the 1960s US anthem on TV, they had hidden messages because when they displayed text, it didn't display the letters in the order in which you would read the letters, but in a different pattern that would produce these messages, and your consciousness couldn't see those messages. But it would reach your subconsciousness and make you obey and make you do what government expects from you. If you saw you were taking just free decisions, well, very, very wrong. You need to deprogram that stuff if you want to be a free human being. Well, they didn't just use that to sell expensive cars that people didn't want to need, but they also used it to engineer the Third Reich, Hitler regime. In other words, mass psychology was the basis of this, and it ended in Second World War, right? Between 50 and 85 people died. So psychology is not that harmless. You know, it's being used as a weapon against people. And this is now being automated with persuasive computing. We now live in an attention economy with the scarcest resources, not the money, but your attention. So everyone is bombarding your attention to be able to program you in these split seconds that you pay attention. And the idea is that now we could actually run society like a giant machine. If you wanted to do this, you would need to know what are all these different pieces that make up society. Of course, it's you, me, and everyone else, and how these different pieces behave and how they can be controlled. And this is what AI, among many other things, is being used for. AI is expected to reach a level of superintelligence about 20 years from now. Consider that the military is usually 30 to 50 years ahead, and probably there are already some systems that are super intelligent, and they're not talking about what they're doing with it. You should be concerned, like Elon Musk and many others, and I will tell you what they're doing with it. So Now, in the beginning, it's harmless, so we will use intelligent machines as tools, useful tools, and they get smarter. We will use them like teammates, and then there will be our coaches that correct our mistakes, and tell us what to do, and in the end, they might end up as our bosses. And then the question is, could we now optimize the world and come up with a big plan and implement that plan, like a benevolent dictator or like a wise king? And actually, that's the dream that some politicians that know about that technology. Most of them don't know about it, but some do. This is the dream they're dreaming of, to govern more efficiently, to have a digital sector. And this does actually exist. It's called nudging. And combined with big data, your data, it's called big nudging. How does it work? Basically, we know since about 80 years or even more that animals can be conditioned to do certain kind of things. So they're exposed to rewards and punishments, and this way they're basically learning to behave in certain kind of ways, right? Now, we are the experimental rats for them. They're doing millions of experiments every day with us to find out how to make us click certain links, how we respond to certain informational input, how we can be triggered to deliver certain behavioral output. And this is being done by creating invisibly a filter bubble around us, which is the Skinner cage that we've been locked into. And it uses machine learning, deep learning, for example, that's applied to big data. So for each of you, there is basically a black box in a supercomputer, and that's being fed by all the data that has been stolen about you to make it learn, behave like you. And then the experiment with that digital duple, how you can be manipulated to do certain kind of things. For example, to hate a particular colleague, to hate particular cultures or religions or all sorts of things. So public opinion can be influenced, but mainly, of course, that's being used to make more money. Personalized information is the way to guide your attention with this to manipulate your emotions, your opinions, your decisions, your behaviors. So you're turned into remotely controlled marionettes. Of course, that doesn't work perfectly yet, but it works to some extent. Now, during the last elections, we've seen that Facebook data has been stolen, about hundreds of millions of users, and this data has been used as a secret weapon, your Facebook likes, because they reveal who you are. We know how it ended, so the election ended in a surprise for many people, and it's based on technology, in this case of Cambridge Analytica, that knows what you think and who you are. So they say 70 likes are enough to know you as well as a friend of yours. 150 likes better than your parents, 300 likes better than your partner, and more likes means that they knew you better than anybody, maybe better than yourself. And that makes it easy to manipulate you. You know, before you have chosen your friends very carefully, you've decided whom to reveal your personality to because you didn't want to be manipulated. Or you wanted to know who is able to manipulate you, and it would only allow people to manipulate you that you trust. Now, there are also the companies that can manipulate you that you can't trust. You don't know what they're doing with your data. They're trying to identify your character, Cambridge Analytica, for example, use this ocean scheme. It's, for example, if you tend to be concerned about what's going on in the world, then they would send you emails and letters basically saying, oh, there have been a lot of burglaries and there have been more terrorist attacks and there's this mass migration issue and so on, and we'll fix it. If you had the opposite character, they would send you an opposite message, so everyone would be basically addressed in a personalized way. Everyone would sing, the government would do exactly the stuff that you are concerned about, but in the end something completely different may happen, right? So it's just a trick to get your vote. And in fact, this is how well they know us. So that's Afra, as you know. Somebody saw that's kind of an average over the whole population. Now this is the characteristics of her. And they have catalogued you as well in that degree of detail. You know, this is what they got about me. I never agreed with this. And that's not even the complete list of what they know about me. Basically, you've been put on a virtual psychological bench, and your psychological traits have been opened up for everyone to see. Go to Crystal Knows, find out about yourself. So there is basically a digital copy created about you. Some people say even your genetic profile has been determined, probably from a blood sample. All of that, of course, stolen data. And it's one of the places, I think, where they keep that data. And we need to be very much concerned because this is located on extraterritorial area where no national laws apply and most international laws don't apply. And data protection is basically, we're watching carefully the data that are given to us. So, what we can conclude is that the matrix has been created, to some extent at least. Now, in fact, I remember one of the first meetings preparing for the flagship competition. There was a woman talking in a red dress. It looked like a Secret Service person. She talked about the subject, Matrix Reloaded. So it's there. You know, it's there. We're being brainwashed. There's mind control being applied to us. Social engineering. We're being deceived. And that is how we ended up in the fact-free world. And Obama has warned of this, but the most powerful man in the world, as people used to say, was not able to stop this from happening, which means that their power is beyond his reach. Powers above government. This is also a time around the world when some of the fundamental ideals of liberal democracies are under attack, when notions of objectivity and of free press and of facts and of evidence are trying to be undermined or, in some cases, ignored entirely. And in such a climate, it's not enough just to give people a megaphone. Because he knew these methods are even more effective than people demonstrating on the streets with megaphones. And eventually, I was revealing what was going on, and then politics was responding. And there was a warning of in the invasion of social bots that would manipulate our opinions. And in fact, there's more use to use these bots to deceive us than to tell us the truth. And of course, that reminds us of George Orwell, 1984, who talked about alternative facts for the first time. In fact, we have arrived in a situation where it's now possible to change videos in real time as you view them. You could change the facial expression, you could change what people are saying. And it would look all natural. You would think that person has really said it, or has he really said that? You know? Then the question, would you be punished? As those animals in the cages sometimes. And the answer is yes. Look into the book of Richard Thaler, and basically suggesting that we're supposed to be there, like the atom in a crystal. If we don't do this, we're misbehaving. And of course, that misbehavior would have to be fixed. He was the president of the American Economic Association, by the way, for some time. Right? And so that was promoted on the very highest level. And now we know that the nudging is not 100% efficient, so they are using other methods as well, such as individualized pricing, such as the social citizen score, where basically everything you do or don't do gets plus or minus points. All the data that have been collected about you is summarized in one number, and it's the citizen score, and it basically represents the usefulness of a citizen from the point of view of those who are in power. And that number would determine how much you have to pay for your loan, what kind of jobs you can get, what countries you can travel to in the case of China. And if you think, oh, we wouldn't have expected anything else from China because it's an autocratic country, then you're wrong, because the very same thing exists, for example, in the UK, which calls itself a democracy, and here it's called karma police. And they look into the movies you're watching, they're even evaluating the music that you're listening to. All that gives plus and minus points, So, to have an intermediate summary, 1984 this year, Brave New World Animal Form, the Third World 2. We're living in a world where we have mass surveillance, profiling, behavioral manipulation, karma police, predictive policing, censorship, and a lot more. We could call that a cyber warfare against the own population. It's not fully in use yet, right? It's waiting to be used, to be switched off fully one day. I'd like to say stop. Because we are endangering really what we've learned over hundreds of years of human history. In many wars and revolutions, we're endangering self-determination, freedom, human dignity, assumed innocence, fairness, justice, pluralism, democracy, participation, and many more things. And in fact, democracies are crumbling all over the world. In Poland, for example, in France, in Turkey, and these are not the only countries, right, where we need to be concerned about the state of democracy. And it didn't come by accident. This was carefully prepared by people like Tony Blair, who were starting to ask, is democracy dead? And in fact, IBM Watson is being proposed to run entire countries, and maybe the entire world. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook is said to have imperial ambitions. He's ready to run the world if he could. We allowed him to do that. And Google wants to reprogram the state. And there are people, some of them I've been spoken in person, and say we want to write history. We want to create something new. Change the political system. And they want, for example, the Chinese system here in Europe. And suddenly there are these demagogues who say technocracy is the best way of running the world. And where would it all lead? Well, certainly in data-driven societies. Well, what kind of society could that be? It doesn't look to be a democracy 2.0. It could end in a fascism 2.0, a Big Brother Brave New World society, or communism 2.0, Big Mother society, where basically the state would believe to know better what's good for you and force you to comply with that. Or feudalism 2.0, a big other society, surveillance capitalism run by big business. Now you might ask, how did we get there? And the reason is our existential problems haven't been solved. Climate change, financial, economic, and spending crisis, conflict and war, mass migration, terrorism, all not solved. And these seem to have a common root cause, which is lack of sustainability. So we are overusing resources, and that causes that resources are lacking elsewhere, which creates conflict and war, and mass migration, terrorism, all those things that we don't want to have. So if you want to live in a better world, this is what we need to fix. We need to make our economy more sustainable. In principle, we should know about the seriousness of this since the 70s of last century, almost 50 years ago. And limit to growth basically told us no matter what parameters we would choose, given the limited resources on this planet, we would run into economic collapse and population collapse. Look at the number of deaths, it would skyrocket within this century. Billions of people would die. Now, of course, nobody wants to tell you this, but that's the situation we're running into if we don't change the system. So, do we have to learn to die? And because of this reason, there's so much debate about ethical dilemmas, and some people saying, we don't want to kill people on the street in a battle or elsewhere, and couldn't we transfer this job to an AI system that has all the data about every one of us, kind of an euthanasia system, and if we would do that, it would really eventually end up in an internet trap. The cashless society would be the last piece that would eliminate our freedom. And now, if you want to imagine better how a future in times of citizen score could look like, then read this science fiction novel that I was involved in. It's a warning to the world, it's an urgent warning. And if you don't believe that what I'm saying is serious, then you should read articles like this. The Pentagon is preparing for massive breakdown. They know what's coming. The elites know what's coming. And that's why they build those 5-star bunkers. They're prepared to escape as soon as the big doomsday scenario comes. So should we build a living Earth simulator now? Actually, I thought I would spend the rest of my life on modeling social problems better and better. But then, a few years ago, I suddenly stopped these efforts, and you might ask why. Actually, it was 2013, if I remember well, so it's 4 years now. I came to the conclusion that the world would be very different in 2 to 3 decades from now. So why model a world that is about to disappear? Why not think about the world that is to come? Because we are now experiencing a digital revolution, and it will change products, services, business models, economic sectors, institutions, politics, and everything else. Nothing will stay the same. We've been in these transitions already in the past. The Industrial Revolution was one of them. Now we're seeing the digital revolution, and a lot of jobs or tasks that we do today will be gone, will be replaced by robots and by AI systems, by automation. In fact, in many countries, we have already skyrocketing unemployment among young people, sometimes above 50%. And it's also challenging companies, actually. 40% of today's top 500 companies will be gone in 10 years. That's what statistics says. And all industrial nations, maybe apart from Switzerland, are kind of largely in debt. Nobody knows when they would ever be able to pay back their debts. So this problem is unsolved. Unsolved problems will eventually create trouble, right? Now, if we look back into history books, then we see that those transitions from the agricultural to the industrial society, and from there to the service society, they weren't smooth transitions. They came with financial and economic crises. They also came with revolutions and wars. So, if we don't want this to happen again, then we need to wake up and make things much better than in the past. There's no way we must remake society in the coming age of AI. Now, if every business model, if every institution will be reinvented, we need to reinvent society, and that's your job. You're the scientists who know most about society, so think about how to reinvent our future, how this future society could and should work, because that knowledge will be needed very soon. If we don't have an idea how this future society should be organized, we would be forced to repeat the very same stupid mistakes that led us into the doomsday scenario. So let us reinvent society. We cannot solve our problems with the same kind of thinking that created them, said Albert Einstein. We need to change our way of thinking. That's why I decided the matrix had to be destroyed, the truth had to come out, because that is a precondition for us to enter a new age. So I was leading the publication of this article, Will Democracy Survive Big Data and Artificial Intelligence, which revealed the matrix, right? Now, if changing parameters is not enough to save us from the doomsday scenario, well, we need to change the equations, right? And changing the equations of our world society means we need to change the monetary, financial, economic, and societal system. That is what changing the equations means. And so I've written this paper basically to address the question, what would I do if I had to fix this problem? So read it. And there are now articles like this, like there's a new game to start. Now, this is the game we played in the past, Monopoly, trying to get as much resources as we could. We need to change the game. You need to be the game changers. And how could this future society look like? Well, we need to create this economy for the dough. I think it would have to be a participative market society. This open letter on the digital economy has also pointed a little bit into this direction, and in fact, I think we need to stop to think this walled garden thinking and learn to create bigger cakes rather than fighting for the pieces of a small cake as we do it today. Because actually, the digital economy is a non-material economy, largely, and that means that it's unlimited. There are infinite possibilities. So the old economy works on the economies of scale and rationalization. That is how you make money. You save on production, make it more efficient. The future digital economy will be based on co-creation. Sharing information will make it more valuable, actually. It's all about creating an information and innovation ecosystem. So we need to think about how to promote such an ecosystem, like a digital rainforest. And how does a rainforest create this amazing diversity and abundance? Well, basically, trees are dropping leaves after some time. And that's turned into humus, and that humus is the basis of life in a rainforest. So couldn't we share data and algorithms, after say 2 years, drop the leaves, so to say. And in this way, create opportunities for everyone. So everyone could be doing better. And remember, even big business would probably benefit because the biggest trees are growing in the rainforest, right? So we need to create data for all. In a digital society where many people will lose jobs, how should we create new jobs? Needs data. So we all need to have access to much more data, and we need to empower people to contribute to the solutions of the future. Because enabling users to take better decisions, to be more creative, more innovative, to coordinate themselves, to cooperate with each other, that will automatically lead to better products, more successful businesses, nicer neighborhoods, smarter cities, and a better future. So open innovation will be important. And how to do that on a worldwide scale? Well, we could start City Olympics with different disciplines such as saving energy, protecting the environment, improving climate, coming up with socially responsible production. All these kind of things. We would have different weight classes like small cities, large cities. Cities would compete every 2 or 4 years with each other. For the very best solution would involve scientists, the media, politics, and the general public, the civil society. They have to be mobilized to invest into new technologies. And then every other year, cities would exchange their experience and knowledge gained, and they would copy the very best solutions that fit their city. So it would create open innovation, Creative Commons, open source, and everyone 2 or 4 years later could take what has been created before and develop it further. So this is a way to make quick progress towards the solution of our problems. Now also, we need to change how the world is organized altogether. Because even though we have the best technology ever, so computational power is increasing exponentially, and more data than ever, it's doubling every year. That means in a year we produce as much data as in all years of human history together. Even though this is the case, the gap between data and what can be processed is increasing. So there's an increasing amount of dark data, which requires scientists to decide what is the data that we need to look at. And as we network the world, systemic complexity is exploding in a combinatorial way. I mean, faster than exponential. And that means we're losing control as we try to control the world in a top-down way. We need a new control paradigm, which has to be distributed control. So we need a new paradigm, from top-down power and control to empowerment and bottom-up coordination. Get away from that over-regulation approach. Learn to design systems that would help people do the right thing. And the Internet of Things is the technology that would allow to make this happen. 300 years after Adam Smith invented this invisible hand concept, we can now make self-organization work. And in fact, we can get rid of traffic jams. You can find that video on the internet. We can overcome congestion by changing the interactions between the bits, called mechanism design. Based on a decentralized approach, we can stabilize traffic flow, increase capacity, and thereby get rid of traffic jams. A similar approach has been applied to urban areas, where we came up with a self-organized traffic light control scheme where traffic flows are controlling traffic lights rather than the other way around, in a flexible way that would create green waves by self-organization and coordination among neighboring intersections, so that a coordinated traffic flow would emerge in the entire city. And it's more successful actually than this old centralized control by a traffic center. Why? Because traffic light control is an NP-hard problem. It cannot be solved even with a supercomputer in real time. So we can do much better by self-organization, by flexible response to the actual situation rather than synchronizing cycles. And it's good for the environment too. And this decentralized approach is also becoming more popular in power grids, and talking about smart grids here, in industrial production, talking about Industry 4.0, where basically those products could talk to the machines and tell them what to do with them, and talk to other products and say, well, I'm actually in a hurry, can I overtake these? And all of this is based on real-time data, measured in real time, of course, and the creation of real-time feedback loops to enable the right kind of interaction and the kind of self-organization we'd like to have. And that could happen on various levels, from a company up to the global scale. Now the difference here is that there are degrees of freedom. This system is not telling you should be doing this, like the big nudging thing. It says, you know, we need 3 people to do this, and incentives will be adjusted in such a way that 3 people say, yeah, we'll do it. So there's much more flexibility for creativity and innovation. At the same time, we have the self-organization of the social order that we'd like to have. And how to boost self-organization, you know, that's the next big challenge really for computational social science, I think, to build, to engineer the platforms that would support that self-organization. We have started on a small scale, because we don't have much money for it. There's a project called NervousNet. It's basically using the fact that every smartphone has about 15 sensors in them, and we can use them to measure the world together. But we'd like to have a system that we can trust, right? And so it's important to give informational self-determination to people. You should be able to decide what sensor to open, in what situation, whether you want to use the data just for yourself or share it. And so that's what we need to work on, and this should allow people to run the Internet of Things as a citizen web. And with all the data that we would now create ourselves, because Google is not going to give us a lot of data, Facebook is not going to do this, so if we want to have data, we need to create it ourselves. But now we can't do that. You know, most of us have smartphones, right? We can create our own data now, just by creating a suitable app. And we can create digital assistants that would support decisions, you know. But you should be in control. You should be able to turn it on or off, to set the goals. Then the system would offer you some alternatives, some options. You would choose. Then the system would help you to achieve your goals in the best possible way. Right? And so there would be an ecosystem of such apps, and we've been working on a number of them, among funny games like Treasure Hunt. We've built a Swarm Pulse app that would be able to drop geolocated information. That could be a measurement of noise or light. It could also be a text, a link to a photo, to a video, to a sound recording. So we could map out the city, we could map out the forest, the ecosystem together in a crowdsourced way. We could also do the same thing with influenza. So we don't feel well, we could report that anonymously. It would help other people to decide, should I get an immunization? Should I protect myself? How can I do that? So it's really about putting power back into the hands of the people. Same thing about consumption. We wouldn't try to nudge people to buy that product that they don't want to have. People would tell their smartphones what they want to have. Like, I care about price 40%, 30% say I care about the environment, 30% about socially responsible production. And I have these and those other G's. Then you would use your smartphone to scan the barcode of the product. You would read in the information of all those alternative products, would scan the product information, not only by the producer, but also feedback by the citizens, by the consumers, and tell you what is the product that fits your needs and your interests best. We can also develop apps to help us in the case of disaster. First of all, to detect earthquakes and warn our friends automatically, we could use apps to map crises, to help first aid, but also to help ourselves, to inform the neighborhood, and create apps basically that would empower people to help each other. By creating autonomous charging stations, by creating autonomous mapping opportunities of broken bridges, damaged buildings, and all this, by creating a small sharing economy that would work in a decentralized way and would allow neighbors to help each other. And in fact, these systems should run on ad hoc networks because the public communication network might break down. They should be able to process payments in a decentralized way. Could be done maybe with Bitcoin or some other blockchain-based money. So we could build systems that help us in case of disaster, but also in everyday life. And what we really need to fix, as I said before, is the sustainability issue, right? So today, every one of us produces about 50 tons of garbage in a lifetime. This is a lot of tables, all sorts of other furnitures, TV sets, computers, smartphones, cars, stuff that's enough for 5 people. We just throw it away. We have linear supply chains, use kind of fresh resources, then mass production sets in to produce products cheaply. Then up to 40% of budgets being used to push it out to you through marketing campaigns. So you would buy something that you would otherwise not buy, then you consume it and throw it away. That's how our economy works today. No wonder it's not sustainable, right? So what can save us is only a circular economy where we would reuse those resources. Then the resources would be enough for everyone. Nobody would have to die. We just need to change the bad organization of our economy. But we need to do that now. It's urgent. And sharing economy is of course part of the deal, right? So how to get there? By regulation, we didn't make much progress. But we could create new market forces by mapping externalities with our smartphones, for example. I know, noise, CO2, if we had the right sensors in it, all sorts of waste, unemployment, undesirable things, all of that would be measured. And the desirable things too, like social cooperation, education, health, new jobs, reuse of resources. And then the principle should be to increase positive externalities and reduce negative ones. And so we need to have a multi-dimensional incentive system. One might create a multi-dimensional financial system if you want. So basically everything would get a price or value, but different kinds of prices or values. There would be CO2 money, there would be noise money, there would be aluminium money, there would be different kind of plastic money. and so on. Basically, you have differentiated incentives, and that could be built with blockchain technology, and we could basically attach a digital label to every resource. You know, this is plastic, this is glass, this is aluminum, this is steel, and could say, hey, I'm here, reuse me. And you could make money with environmentally friendly production. Today is expensive, right? So everyone wants to produce environmentally friendly, but it's more expensive. That means you make less profit, and that means those companies that don't do it will expand more quickly, and that's why we don't get enough environmental friendly production on the way. We need to have a different incentive system where you can earn different kinds of monies by doing the things that we value in our society. We can make our financial system compliant with our cultural and societal values. That's what we can do now, that's what we need to do now. And finally, we need democratic capitalism to boost innovation, because we haven't much time left to fix the world. The problem at the moment is there's so much inequality, it's actually hampering, it's obstructing economic growth and innovation. There's some venture capitalists. If you have a great idea, you have to go to them and say, hey, I have an idea, can you give me some money? But they don't have much time. So most good ideas are lost on the way. Some of those ideas will make it to them and will give an elevator pitch, you know, kind of 60 seconds or whatever. Then your chance is gone. Say, you have a fantastic idea, it will really change the world, but unfortunately, it's not compatible with the business models that this person has sponsored before. He will not allow this to happen. He will make sure your idea will be buried, and that's it. So we need a new innovation system where really disruptive innovation that could fix the world would come up. We need to turn this innovation desert, digital desert that we have in Europe into a digital rainforest. You know, that requires water, and water, of course, in this case, is money. And that money, it's often said, is coming to us through a trickle-down mechanism. It hasn't worked. Central banks have pumped hundreds of billions of dollars into the markets to keep our economy from collapsing, they said. You know? Have you seen any of this money? Small and medium-sized companies haven't seen it. Spin-off companies haven't seen it. We haven't seen it. It's just pocket money for the elites that own the Fed, that partially own the ECB, that partially own the Swiss National Bank, and so on. You know, they're doing the stuff that they like, but it's not fixing our world as we can see. So we need a new funding mechanism. Crowdfunding for all. What I call democratic capitalism. Instead of pumping hundreds of billions of money into the markets in a top-down way, it would be put on your bank account. But it's not for you to spend. It would be for you to invest into great ideas, into great projects, into new technologies, innovations, people who engage for our environment, for social matters. Whatever you think is important, and it might be a neighborhood project, like a new kindergarten, a park, repairs of the street. This will happen. You will have democratic rights in terms of investment and economic opportunities. We would unleash the wisdom of crowds. And how to do this? How to boost collective intelligence? Well, we need to learn how to bring the knowledge and ideas of many people together. And of AI systems too, by the way. Now the magic about collective intelligence is no matter how good individual solutions are, the very best individual solution is not the very best systemic solution. And a very nice example is the Netflix prize, but there are many more examples. So by combining the best solution with, say, the second and third best, you would not deteriorate the solution, you would improve the solution. Surprisingly, it's better to combine your solution with solutions that appear to be worse. And same thing if then this third, fourth, fifth, and sixth best team would combine their solution. It might be as good as the solution as the coming out from the combination of the leading three teams. So this is amazing. Collective intelligence is really what we need. Not the rule of the majority over the minority. We need to bring good ideas together to create even better innovative ideas, and this is what digital democracy should be about, and that's how we would build it. So I'm ending by saying we're in the middle of a grand transformation of our society, and you will all be able and should contribute to this transformation. This is a time where you can really change reality. This grand transformation consists of three transformations, like the digital transformation, the ecological transformation towards a low-carbon economy. About 50% of our economy has to change in just a few years. Now, that's why we need massive innovation, much more innovation than before. And we need a financial transformation. It's really the monetary and financial system that limits our economic, societal, and cultural evolution. Right now, this is the greatest obstacle towards our future. But if we do what I propose, I think we'll all live in an age of prosperity and peace. Now, it's possible. Doomsday can be avoided, but we need to act. We need to change our economy and society very soon. And so I'm saying, to fix the world by 2030, the much better solution and a top-down control of our minds and decisions and behavior through the matrix. We can boost resilience, we can boost collective intelligence, self-organization, sustainability, co-creation, innovation, and we can solve global problems. It's time to do that together. Thank you.
So, can I?
Do you think that maybe basic income could boost collective intelligence and conscious consumption, because people are free from their worries to survive or something?
I think basic income can be part of the solution, but it's not the full solution. I think we're in a time where everyone needs to be reinventing himself and his job, or herself and her job. So the digital and ecological transformation will mix up all our lives. And so we need to have freedom to think about what our new role and activity and contribution to society would be. We need existential security, in the sense of insurance that gives us this freedom to experiment. So we wouldn't have to worry whether we would have food and drinks and shelter next month. But what's lacking is basically the competitive mechanism that has really driven us forward in terms of innovation and all this. We've never seen a totally equal society. And some inequalities is probably good. So I think if you would introduce a basic income, it should be combined with this investment premium that I was talking about, which creates this competitive mechanism. If you have great ideas, you will earn more, so people will try to come up with great ideas, right? And I think the combination of the two would be a good solution.
Any other question?
But of course, then the question always comes: how should we pay for this? The tax system as we have it today can't do that. So that's really one of the reasons why I think we have to overhaul the current monetary system. We need to be able, either the government or we as the citizens, to create money ourselves in the way that the national banks is now doing it on behalf of some private people. And if we don't do this, we'll not be able to come up with that new system. So don't think that by sitting on your sofa and texting some tweets and sending some Facebook posts, we'll get into a society that would do the job for us and would save us and create a better future. It needs more. And you need to think about this. Be aware that basically the power that big business and politics has over us, this has been transferred to them by us. We have delegated our power to other people. And they've done many good things to us, but apparently they can't solve the world's existential problems the way they have tried to solve them in the past, and they won't be able to do it in the future if we don't activate the innovation capacity and the contribution of civil society, right? So we need to take power back, basically. We need to take more responsibility for our society, and this is what needs to happen now.
I am interested in your self-organized and decentralized collective intelligent idea, but I think that like people have cognition limitation, like people has some bias somehow, and I would like to ask is the self-organized system can avoid a global catastrophe, because like in the financial in 2007 everybody has believed that okay it's gonna grow forever, but actually it's created hidden risks that create the financial bubble and the financial collapse. Can we prevent something like that in the self-organized system that in the future? Because I think we have cognition limitation in every human, and the way that we connected together in the hyper-connected network. I think it maybe cannot be avoided that hidden risks can happen and maybe global catastrophe can happen somehow.
That's a good question. So I think that one of the reasons why this financial crisis has happened, if it wasn't engineered, is because the systemic risks were not priced in. At that time, people didn't even know how to measure systemic risk, but we know that systemic risks increase with the level of connectedness in the system, because if one bank, say, collapses, that could impact other banks, and so a cascading effect would happen. That should be priced in principle. It comes down to what I proposed before, measuring externalities. And measuring externalities shouldn't only include what happens right now, but also what would be the potential impact on the system, right? So certainly self-organizing systems that avoid double cascading effects would have to be organized in a modular way. We know that very well from the organization of large companies. And so this knowledge needs to be transferred to the design of complex systems, basically. So if we have arbitrary many long-range links to other places in the world, that creates the potential for cascading effects, and we need to think about how much of those links are serving us well, and to what extent are they actually producing damage or risks that we cannot actually accept.
Any other question?
Thank you for this truly inspiring talk. And before my question, I just want to shortly comment on what you presented on Cambridge Analytica, because the work of predicting personality based on likes is not Cambridge Analytica work, it's just work of people from Cambridge University, which are completely different from Cambridge Analytica. So this is just on a side note. And my question is about the priming effects, because you mentioned that you're like constantly primed by like advertisement on the internet and everything like that. But like psychological experiment shows that in fact priming has very limited impact on our decision making and behavior. So you feel like this constant priming can be more powerful, or like is it different from what we've seen so far?
Yeah, good point. So Michael Kosinski certainly has to be mentioned. Just talked in Berlin, great speaker, great mind. Now, in fact, repeated priming, I think, changes the situation. There is this Ash experiment, you remember this, right? So, if a lot of people or sources of information would tell you the same thing, you would start to believe it. That's kind of the problem. And it also applies, by the way, to newspapers. They're controlled by just a few people. And in fact, there seem to be 6 media moguls that basically control the media empires of the world. We can be exposed to the very same messages from different directions, and we would start to believe what they're saying, right? And eventually we wouldn't question it any longer. That's kind of the risk, and the question is how much that is creating a hypnotic effect, because certainly it can contribute to stabilizing a system that we have. But if we're living in a system that will end in disaster for sure if we go on like this, we shouldn't be doing this. You know? We need people to think out of the box and come up with completely new ideas, and also question the consumption system that we have today, for example. Otherwise we can't get more sustainable, maybe. So that's the problem. We're trapped into the thinking that we're used to. And I was thinking about the following. Suppose, we would live like a bird in a cage, and somebody would open the door of the cage. Which I think, this has happened, right? The matrix has been destroyed, people know about it, and so on. Would we still stay in the cage because they put food there every day and we're used to that kind of life? Or would we decide to fly out into the open and really explore entirely new paths, adventures? We wouldn't know what would happen to us, what kind of reality we would be faced with. Would we be courageous enough to do this and kind of reset our life and our society? I think that's what we should try now.
Another question?
Thank you for this talk, and I'm very happy that this kind of issues are raised in a computational social science summer school. Following up on the priming thing, so you showed Foucault's panopticon system. And I was just wondering, I love some of the ideas of the solution, and I believe that they are feasible. On the analysis done following up on the priming, I was thinking that maybe we could collaborate again, as I was saying yesterday, more with computational social scientists, because I come from surveillance studies perspective. So I was thinking that Foucault hasn't offered just the concept of panopticon to explain the system of surveillance in a digital society, but has also talked about neoliberalism and the power relations. So I just think that these solutions could be easier to implement once we understand how power relations work in the neoliberal capitalism context that we live in today. So unless we understand why, because of course priming and agenda setting have an impact on people's behavior, but more than that, it's the power relations and how people are subjected to powers and why certain discourses are dominant and alternative ones like you presented, and people think that this cannot happen. So how do you explore these power dynamics in the society?
Yeah, I was looking out maybe here for a particular slide. This is a very relevant question because most of us are not aware of the way power is being created and society is being steered. And I'm looking for a particular slide here. Hopefully it's there somewhere. Otherwise, I'll just have to talk about it. It's not here, unfortunately. So, I have a slide which is about control structures. So suppose you would want to control society. How would you do that? You would use all sorts of means. You would use laws, you would use social norms, you would use education, you would use the media, but also maybe food, environmental influences on our bodies. So you basically go through all the different domains of life, from physics over chemistry, biology, medicine, psychology, sociology, and so on, and see how can I control people in this domain. And it turns out there are some very small minorities, so-called elites, that have learned how to apply these tools to control us. And that altogether creates the matrix. It's not just this informational matrix created by filter bubbles, that's the matrix. It's a much bigger thing. So to break free, we basically need to look at all these control mechanisms, deconstruct them, understand them, analyze them critically, and see what are alternatives. How can we break up these mechanisms? I tell you, it's not as complicated as you think. In many cases, just talking about it in public, in the newspapers, will fix it, because some of these mechanisms are so immoral, so shocking, that they couldn't be kept up any longer. So as soon as there is a beam of light of truth hitting these kind of things, basically these mechanisms lose their power. And that's your role as scientists, to identify those mechanisms of power to control our thinking, to control our bodies, our lives, and to neutralize these forces so we would be free to reinvent society. And that can be done within actually a few weeks' time. If you would really sit down and do this analysis and get the word out, we would be free to come up with a new society order in a very short time.
Maybe last question.
I also want to thank you for the talk, but also maybe challenge you a bit to comment on in how far what we see today is really so different from what we've been seeing in the past. Like, isn't your notion of self-determination and freedom in the post-big data or digitalized age a bit exaggerated? Like a lot of the examples you gave, I was thinking of more classic social scientists writing about this in the past already, like the social citizenship score. We have Young's book on the rise of the meritocracy, when he wrote exactly about how capitalism instills an ideology of scoring and putting people on a scale that then, determines their value. Also, you have Manuel Castells writing about how actually many-to-many communication, which is what we have today, leads to individualization and people having a lot more varied preferences than in the past when it was one advertiser targeting a lot of people at the same time. So with everything just getting accelerated nowadays, I'm wondering whether we don't have to think way more outside the box than talking about capitalism 2.0. I mean, capitalism is what's going on and what got us here, right? So we have to become aware of the fact that competitiveness and scaling and these things are all an ideology, and I don't know, I'm not sure whether I'm making myself clear, but I don't think that what's happening today is so novel, and maybe our solutions have to be way more different than what we've imagined in the past. So thank you.
Yeah, very good question too. Many people say, come on, I mean, what we're seeing here with big nudging and so on is just maybe scaling up and personalization and of what we had before, just different in quantity. And maybe it's also different in quality. That's what we would need to look at actually. And also, I think it's not a good argument to say we had influencing by advertisement before, and so that should be all acceptable in the future. The point is really, in many systems there is an optimum of a certain quantity or quality, and if you go beyond that optimum, then basically you can really have very negative effects on the system altogether. And as you have said, extrapolating all those mechanisms of the past into the future, making them more powerful and more effective, may not be the solution for our problems. We would probably have already solved the existential problems that I've been talking about if those old approaches would be effective to solve them. So yes, we need to think fundamentally different. We need to think out of the box, and I'd like to encourage you not just to repeat what I've suggested as a possible better future, but to think about solutions yourself. And it could very well be that there are even better solutions than that. And I'd like to learn that from you. I think everyone should think about this future and how you would organize the future if you could decide how it should work. Because now we're living in a time where within 15 years we can make science fiction kind of technology come true. We've seen that many times. So we have more possibility than ever really to create the kind of society that we'd like to have. It could be with a lot more technology, but maybe the solution isn't technology. So we need to discuss about all of this. And what I believe altogether, we need a new zeitgeist. That's the beginning of a new era. The new times can only start if there's a new kind of thinking. So a new zeitgeist is needed, as we've experienced that with the Summer of Love 50 years ago, where suddenly young people, and a lot of other people too, have started to think differently, to challenge the old thinking, the old organization of society, and they came up with new principles and have reshaped society. And it's about time to do the same thing here. So what I've learned from you by the end of that workshop is basically what would be the new principle of that new time. The guiding principle, the one thing that we'd all like to dream about and see it come true. And the Summer of Love obviously was love, right? We learned to love ourselves. Now we need to learn to love our planet and each other, we need to understand we're all sitting in the same boat, and the boat is called planet Earth. So we can only be doing better if people around us are also doing well. We need to learn this. But how can you put that into a phrase that's stimulating our thinking, our dreaming, our vision, that would be a motor of our activities in the future, you know? We would certainly need to think about the essence of life. I don't think it makes much sense to spend our life buying goods and throwing them away, you know. That's, from my point of view, that's a very poor kind of life, you know. I don't believe in money, I don't believe in having a lot of stuff. I believe in ideas, you know. Ideas are much more exciting for me. And so what would be the one idea that mobilizes people and takes us away into this better future? So maybe you can tell us, maybe somebody else. Think about it, let me know, thanks.
Can I think?